Hey everybody, Chris, the old-ass retro gamer here. So I was recently tagged in another video, the $1 Gamestop challenge by the Guerilla Gamer, whose channel I will link to in the description below. And as with all these videos I get tagged in, I fully intend to respond to it. It's what I do. But since the topic isn't long enough to justify an entire video, I decided to add on another. Recently, John Riggs of Rigg'd Games was tagged in the 50-50 challenge, which is 5 questions that have to do with gaming and 5 questions that have to do with your personal life. So I figured I would combine these two topics into one video, one big tag video. Only thing is I'm not going to tag anyone specific in this video. If you feel like you want to make a response video to this, feel free. The option is yours. As John Riggs mentioned in his video, if you're feeling a little bit of that YouTube creativity block, be my guest. So let's start off with the video I was tagged in by the Guerilla Gamer, and that was the $1 GameStop challenge, where he showed off a number of games that were available at GameStop for $1 and under, to show that, yeah, even though GameStop is kind of an evil corporate entity and the enemy of all gamers everywhere, sometimes you can go there and get a good deal. So here's a bunch of games that I know for a fact I purchased at GameStop for under $1. All these Rock Band games for under $1 each. This is Rock Band 1, 2, and the AC/DC Live track pack. I got each of these for, I think, 75 cents each. And for the Wii, Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, which is like a point-and-click adventure game, kind of like Myst, I got this for a cool 50 cents. And it's actually a pretty good game, so if it was more expensive, I might have bought it then too. Mag, which is an online first-person shooter, which I don't even think is active online anymore. I think the servers are all shut down, but I got this for 50 cents. Stormrise by Sega is basically the exact same thing. I got this for 75 cents. Blood Drive, which is kind of like a Carmageddon ripoff, actually pretty fun. Got this for 99 cents at a GameStop, for show. And finally, Front Mission Evolved. This is the one that shocked me the most out of all of the ones I know that I've gotten for under $1. Why? Because this is a game by Square Enix that is part of a long-running franchise that goes all the way back to, I do believe, the Super Famicom, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. I had some time to spare before I had an appointment, and I stopped in this GameStop, and I was just browsing what they have. I didn't really have any intention of buying anything. This was sitting in the pre-owned PS3 section for 25 cents. 25 cents, people. You damn right, I said. Yes. Don't quote me on any of these prices because I did pick most of these up well over a year ago. So now let's get into the half and half challenge. So it's 5 questions that have to do with gaming and 5 questions that have to do with me personally.
Shall we begin?
So let's do the 5 gaming questions first, shall we? Okay, first question is, name a game that you were skeptical about but ended up being fantastic. That's easy. That is Tomb Raider Legend for the Xbox. I was a fan of the franchise, the first 2 games at least for the PS1, and then 3 and 4 and 5, and then Tomb Raider, The Angel of Darkness, all ended up being so bad in my eyes that the franchise was dead to me. The developers took a few years off, and I think they just kind of regrouped and tried to figure out what they could do to bring the franchise back to life, and that ended up being Tomb Raider Legend. But I did end up renting Legend when it was released, and I found it to be extremely fun, and I ended up going and buying my own copy of it so I could finish it. They changed the controls for the better, which was one thing that was ticking me off about the old games, was they were just happy with leaving everything the same and just having new scenarios for your character, not improving on the graphics or the gameplay or anything. Legend fixed everything. Not only did it have a really cool story that was all about the Arthurian legends, which I found really fascinating. There were new elements added in, like your little rope that you could use to grab onto things. There was less of an emphasis on Laura's assets, if you know what I mean. And they made the series fun again. Number 2 is, if you could have any item from a video game, what would it be? Man, give me that pork chop from Castlevania. I'm hungry.
Are you serious, bro?
Number 3 is, what was the best video game related gift you ever received from a friend? When I first got back into collecting a few years ago, I had like a birthday get together with a bunch of select friends. And 2 of them, who are a couple, my friends Nick and Lorelai, they bought me Castlevania for the NES. I had been looking for that game for a long time, and it is just way overpriced for what it is. It is like a real common game, but for some reason it still goes for a lot of money, more than I was willing to pay. But they managed to find a copy of it at some local store for, I guess, not that much money. I was actually completely taken aback that they bought me a copy of this. I always have like a policy. I was like, I'm inviting you over for my birthday. It just means that I want to spend the day with you people. You don't have to buy me anything. I don't expect anything from anybody. So when they gave me this, I was stoked. Number 4 is, what is a game that you really enjoy but no one else seems to know about? That would be a game that I've mentioned a couple of times on my channel, and that's Star Trek Conquest. It's not really a starship combat game like most of the games that they were releasing were. It is actually kind of like a strategy game that's played like this funky version of chess where you pick what faction you want. It starts off with you being able to play as the Federation, the Klingons, and I do believe the Romulans. And like every other strategy game, you have to start building resource points so you can build star bases to make more ships. And you need to start taking over areas of the board, which are different sectors of space, and take out your opposition, which is trying to do the exact same thing you are. As the game goes on, you can unlock even more factions like the Borg, and the Ferengi, and the Breen, and the Dominion, which rocks. And whenever you do have a battle, when you're trying to take a space that is already occupied, or vice versa, you have the option of either doing your own fighting, which is like the typical Bethesda space combat was in all the games that they were making, or you can just have the computer do it for you. And it's over within about 5 seconds, which is the way I play, because I can get a game done in at least 20 minutes if I'm lucky. It's like a strategy light game, and it's just super fun to just pick up and play for a game or two, and then, you get on with your life. And question 5 is, what game do you think needs a sequel or a modern remake? That's easy for me also, and that would be ActRaiser. The original ActRaiser for the Super Nintendo is my favorite video game of all time, and if you haven't played it, it is half side-scrolling action platformer and half God Simulator. It sounds weird, but it works. There was a sequel that was released a few years later, and I was not a fan of it. It completely changed up what the game was, the mechanics, and took out the God Simulator stuff, which is a sin in my eyes. But today, with the capabilities that the consoles have now, I can just imagine what that game would look like, either as a sequel or as a complete remake in HD. I imagine this like crazy SimCity God Simulator scenario that would just blow my mind, and the action stuff would probably be in like a third-person mode, which would be amazing. More like a beat-em-up, I would assume. I would just flat out piss myself if I heard that announced at an E3. About a year ago, maybe more, Square Enix had like a survey that they were asking gamers to fill out about what they thought of their games, what games they wanted to see in the future, what they thought of the company itself and all that. And there was a question that was similar, like, hey, which of our IPs would you like to see a sequel to? And straight up, I said ActRaiser, because yes. And now let's get into the 5 personal questions. Number 1 is, who is your favorite musician or band? I've brought this up before. That would be KMFDM. They are an industrial band that I do believe started in the 80s, and they are still around today, creating new albums. And in fact, a new remix album just came out the other day. I knew about them in the late 80s, and it was basically because there was a rumor floating around that their name, KMFDM, stood for Kill Motherfucking Depeche Mode. Turns out to not be true. I'm not going to say it because I will butcher it, but it's an anagram of a saying that in English means no pity for the majority. They used to do a lot of politically themed songs back in the day, but don't really do that much anymore. Now it is mostly all about the ultra heavy beat, as they call it. Some of their songs have been used in movies like Mortal Kombat. They used Juke Joint Jezebel during the fight between Sonya and Kano. I think it was also used in Bad Boys. Their song Megalomaniac was used over the end credits of Mortal Kombat Annihilation. They even used their song Ultra in the Street Fighter II animated movie, the anime one. In the mid-90s, they had like this renaissance where they were like the it group. Everybody knew Juke Joint Jezebel. If you love industrial music, if you love stuff with a really good beat, give them a listen because you will not be disappointed. They rarely ever disappoint me. Number 2 is, what is something you really liked as a kid but don't really like so much now? Because of the new Ghostbusters movie that came out, Hi-C brought back Ecto Cooler. And when I was a kid, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was the best freaking thing ever. You would see me walking around the house, sipping on one of those juice boxes, all, this is the best day of my life. Juice box, juice box, juice box. I wanted to try it again because it had probably been, 15 some odd years since I last had it. Wanted to give it a shot. And found it on Amazon's grocery site and had 2 12-packs of cans delivered to my house. Made damn sure that those things were chilled before I cracked one of them open, and I was really disappointed. It was a lot weaker tasting than I remember. I remember it being real sugary and had a real strong orange taste, but this was basically like some artificially tinted water that had a couple of drops of some orange juice in it, and it just didn't taste like I remembered it. It took me about a month to drink all the cans in that first case, and I still have the second one unopened sitting on top of my refrigerator, and I have no plans on cracking that one open at all. It just didn't do it for me anymore. Everyone seems to have an ecto cooler boner. All the geeky channels that I watch on YouTube, for a while, that's all they seemed to want to talk about was ecto coolers back, and I was like, yeah, it is, and yeah, it's not as great as I remember. But that's just me. Number 3 is something dumb you did as a teenager. I've brought it up plenty of times that I'm a filmmaker, and I've been making movies ever since I was probably in junior high. A bunch of friends and I decided to make a Shadowrun movie of our own. It ended up not being so good, but I did one thing during the filming of that movie that I'm surprised didn't kill me, and that was jump in front of a moving car. As one of the main villains, I jumped onto the main actor's car and jumped on his hood while he was driving at about, I don't know, I want to say 20 miles an hour, and I jumped on his hood, and he actually drove for about a quarter of a mile with me on the hood and slammed on his brakes and flung me off of it almost into a tree. The things we do for art. I was fine, I didn't get hurt, but the thing was, when I had edited the whole movie together and showed it to my parents, they were not too thrilled to see me do that. In fact, they pretty much called me a frickin' moron to my face. You gotta do what you gotta do to make sure you get the shot. Nowadays, I would never do that in a million years. Number 4 is, what did you want to be when you grew up? The main thing was a filmmaker, and I actually am. I'm not professional in any way, shape, or form, but I am a filmmaker, so it kind of came true. But the other thing I wanted to do, actually, before I wanted to be a filmmaker, was I wanted to be a comic book artist. I drew all the time. I drew my own comic books all the time. I was always drawing something, mostly to the annoyance of the teachers in school, where I was drawing instead of paying attention to what they were teaching. A comic book artist at the beginning because I just loved art. I always excelled at art classes. And once I got the filmmaking bug, I really wanted to make movies, and I have. And I still do. And number 5 is, if you could go back and do something differently, what would it be? And that would have to be that I kind of wish I didn't drop out of college. Back when I first started college, I had super bad anxiety. I was just really self-conscious, and it drove me crazy. And I only went to college for 1 year, got decent grades. I ditched a lot of the classes that I didn't like to play Mortal Kombat 2, like I've brought up before. And when time came to sign up for my sophomore year of college, I just said I'm not doing this anymore because I just can't handle it. And eventually I got over all that. It does rear its ugly head every once in a while, but it's usually when I'm in a large place filled with people that I don't know, and there's no one that I know around. It's not really a problem that much anymore. And even though I do have a very good job that is very fulfilling and is something that you wouldn't expect someone who doesn't exactly have a degree to be doing, I think I've done pretty well for myself. But I do wish I stayed in school. I mean, I might have been a professional filmmaker if I did. You never know. No regrets, though. And that's it. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I took on not only the $1 GameStop challenge, but also the half and half challenge. Not too shabby, Mr. Old-Ass Retro Gamer, if I do say so myself. So I will link below to the original $1 GameStop challenge where I was tagged from the Guerilla Gamer in the description below, as well as John Rigg's half and half challenge. Give them a view, give them a subscribe if you haven't already. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so as well. Get to know whenever I upload a video right when it happens. Incentive. Also, please share the video on social media if you can. Help spread the old-ass retro gamer love. Give the video a thumbs up if you like what you see, and leave any and all comments below. What games have you picked up at GameStop recently that cost $1 or under? Will you take the half and half challenge? If you don't feel like making a video about it, just leave your responses below because I'd be interested in seeing what you have to say. Really, I do. Otherwise I wouldn't have said it. Truth! So until next time, I'm Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, signing off. So now let's get into the half and half challenge.